Close your eyes for a minute and think back. It's September 2022. Do you remember what it was like? A cool fall breeze is in the air. The Lord of the Rings, the Rings of Power, is failing hilariously. The last shackles of COVID lockdowns and mandates are finally being dismantled. Drop Kiwi Farms is hitting its impotent zenith, and the kids are going back to school only to discover that one of their teachers is wearing a hilariously huge prosthetic bust. Man, people were really taking the piss when this story came out. And how can you not? Even I was on the Weekly Sip. Just look at this. This is clearly ridiculous, right? As you can see in one of these video clips that went viral, this person is a woodworking teacher. And I gotta say, this looks super dangerous. Like that saw blade is going to catch and pop one of those titties or something. The feminist website Redux, in their article on the story, confirmed that the teacher in question, Kayla Lemieux, works as a shop teacher at Oakville Trafalgar High School in Ontario, Canada. Nowhere near me, thankfully, but I do know a little bit about Oakville. Lemieux's faculty page on the school board website connects to a Google account with photos that seem to confirm the identity and the transition. Redux contacted the high school for comment, and the only thing they would confirm is that Lemieux does indeed work there. They had no comment on anything else. The school is under the Halton District School Board, which released gender identity and gender expression guidelines back in October of 2021. The guidelines read that the Halton District School Board recognizes the right of students, staff, parents, guardians, and community members to equitable treatment without discrimination based upon gender identity and gender expression. The Halton District School Board is committed to establishing and maintaining a safe, caring, inclusive, equitable, and welcoming learning and working environment for all members of the school community, including staff who identify as or are perceived as trans, and those who are questioning their sexual orientation and/or gender identity. Meanwhile, a student at Oakville Trafalgar High claims to have at least 15 different videos of this teacher, sneakily shot with a cell phone, and that while the kids there don't think this is normal behavior, they can't do anything. Last year, the teacher was a man, but the student believes the school can't get rid of him, presumably due to the school board's gender identity and gender expression guidelines. A similar guideline from the school board, the student dress code, says that students cannot wear clothing or accessories that display sexism, vulgarity, or pornography, and that students cannot wear clothing that exposes or makes visible genitals or nipples. The student dress code doesn't apply to the teachers, obviously, but even if it did, I'm not sure it would matter. I mentioned in my video on Sam Smith that a large part of previous gay and trans activism, the respectable stuff, was all about disproving the notion that gay and trans people are hypersexual, that they can actually integrate into society and not just be weird degenerates on the margins. But that era of gay and trans activism has seemingly passed, and today's activists literally seem to be all about normalizing public display of sexuality and fetishes. In essence, complaining about public sex or public nudity makes you homophobic and transphobic in the eyes of 2023's leftoids. And it's that shift that has basically paralyzed the school board in their response to Kayla Lemieux. You think I'm exaggerating? Don't take it from me. This is exactly what the school board themselves said. On November 10th, 2022, Lemieux made headlines again when the Halton District School Board came down with their ruling on the situation. Let's read it. If an employer's dress and grooming standards place more difficult requirements on female employees relative to those placed on male employees, or require female employees to dress in a manner which is more conventional, such standards could form the basis of a discrimination claim under the Ontario Human Rights Code. Similarly, it's important to recognize the impact that dress code policies can have on members of the transgender community. Most notably, it is important for employers to make allowances to ensure that these employees are able to express themselves in accordance with their lived gender. To the extent that workplace policies mandate that employees dress in a particular manner, it is important for those policies to be gender neutral in their application, and that they impose similar dress standards and requirements for all employees, regardless of gender. The public asked the school board to implement a formal staff dress code in response to this story going viral. The school board's ruling on that topic stated that a formal staff dress code or grooming standards would likely expose the board to considerable liability. Even if a dress code is implemented for non-discriminatory reasons, it would likely be found to be discriminatory, where it adversely affects an employee or a group of employees on the basis of their code-protected grounds. This is corpo speak for, basically, equality means that if women can do it, then men can do it, and you can't question it. And if they're trans, then you really can't question it. And of course, you're trans if you self-ID as trans. This is an ideological position the school board has held consistently throughout this controversy. Back when the story first broke in September, news outlets around the world were mistakenly publishing Lemieux's name as Stephen Hanna. The Halton District School Board issued a public correction to the story shortly after it broke, calling the mistake misinformation, clarifying that the individual is not Stephen Hanna. Stephen Hanna is a staff member of the Halton District School Board who is an entirely separate individual and is completely unrelated to this matter. They then asked all media to scrub mention of Stephen Hanna in their reporting. Regarding the main controversy, they then remarked that gender identity and gender expression are protected grounds under the Human Rights Code, and that the story itself is a personal matter. News from Canada rarely crosses the border, but it did this time, even making it onto Tucker Carlson's segment on Fox News. Check this shit out.
So this week, videos surfaced on the internet from a place called Trafalgar High School in Oakville, Ontario. That's right across the lake from Niagara Falls. These videos show a teacher called Stephen Hanna, who apparently has been employed at Trafalgar High for several years. Recently, Hanna decided to dress like a woman, or more precisely, as a grotesque caricature of a woman, not a real woman, but a kind of pneumatically inflated Marilyn Monroe look-alike. As part of his costume, Hanna strapped on a pair of gigantic prosthetic breasts, each the size of a 10-pound watermelon. We're not exaggerating here. They're visible from at least 100 yards away, if not from space. We'll show you the picture we are right now on the screen. But here's the thing. Hanna isn't doing this in private, in his home, in restaurants and clubs. If he were, we would not be mentioning it on the show because it would not be our business. Have fun, Stephen Hanna. No. Stephen Hanna is doing it in class, in front of children. As the Canadian journalist Jonathan Kay put it, Hanna has been dressing like this for a while, but only recently have students within the school gone public with this fact. So they've been enduring this for a while. Kay also notes that Hanna's costume is based on a style of Japanese internet pornography, which translates roughly into English as exploding milk porn.
You know, we live in the most blessed of timelines. I never, in my wildest dreams, would have ever have thought to hear the words exploding milk porn to come out of Tucker Carlson's mouth. And to be honest, it was a treat watching the dumbfuck progs tie themselves into knots in an attempt to justify this, how you're transphobic for objecting or laughing at all this nonsense. Probably the funniest bit of all was from the ringleader of the failed Drop Kiwi Farms campaign, Keffels, who stated that this is clearly a cisgender woman with a disease that causes her breasts to grow way too big.
Oh, by the way, good notice something at this point. They have absolutely no evidence at all that this shop teacher is trans. Like, so far, what are they going on? They're going on one photo where they think that the shop teacher, their gender is ambiguous. That's all they have. That's literally it. The rest of this is all speculation. It's just so dumb. It's so fucking dumb. It's so fucking dumb. Like, okay, and this is speculation. But someone sent me some interesting stuff I didn't see during the discourse cycle. But someone found the teacher. They found the teacher involved in this. And I was told not to share the information out of respect for the teacher in question, so I won't. The teacher in question is not trans. The teacher is a cis woman that has breast hypertrophy. And basically, that's a medical condition in the breast connective tissues, which makes the breast become excessively large. So if it's true, and I have no reason to believe it isn't, a random cis woman with a medical condition ended up getting harassed by Tucker Carlson because, yeah, Tucker Carlson was misgendering a cis woman, doing targeted harassment against a cis woman. And all it took is one photo where she might have looked a little bricked up. And then, boom, you got a whole fucking transphobic media cycle. Just the amount of bullshit that they were able to cobble together with one video and like two fucking photos. It's impressive how fast and efficient this propaganda machine works at making people hate trans people.
I don't know how out of this fucking world you have to be to even think this. You can even find the exact prosthetic Lemieux uses on Amazon for $500. Jesus Christ. Hell, the school board even ruled that while it's completely fine to strap two giant watermelons to your chest and go to school like that, it's absolutely not okay for students to be leaking photos or video of it. Why not? What's the logic here? If it's fine, why do you want to hide it? These pics show Lemieux on crutches, having apparently suffered a foot injury that has kept them out of shop class at Oakville Trafalgar High. During this period, Lemieux was teaching as a substitute teacher at other schools in Oakville, apparently under police guard the entire time. The reason for that is the whole shit show has escalated to threats against the school and staff, including bomb threats at this point, and Lemieux now has a police guard whenever working at a school. It took a while for people to finally begin to suspect that this was all fake. Well, no, we all knew it was fake. This person isn't a woman, and obviously isn't a trans woman either. What I mean is, the progressive position on Lemieux is that this was a trans woman finding themselves and expressing themselves, and if we interfere with it, then we're bigots. While the normie position on Lemieux is that this is clearly a dude who has a fetish for duct taping two midgets to his chest, and he was getting off and making other people, especially children, treat him like a woman and glamorize him and normalize him, despite it being so obviously absurd. Everyone talks about the emperor with no clothes, but nobody puts themselves in the emperor's shoes in that story. Either the emperor is insane, or they're getting pleasure by using their power to make those beneath them speak a blatant falsehood, and most people thought that with Lemieux it was the latter. However, it might actually be the case that it's neither. Like I said, people began to finally suspect this when Lemieux was photographed in full getup doing a skydive with a porn star, an event in which that signature blonde wig was lost to the elements. Whoops. And it's come out recently that Lemieux is regularly seen walking around town without the fetish gear on, just as a regular guy. People living at his apartment complex see him all the time. He's been spotted at department stores, grocery stores, whatever. Most of the time, he appears to be just a random middle-aged guy. According to those around him, he only puts the fetish gear on when he goes to work or when the police drop by his apartment building, and they apparently drop by regularly due to how many threats he receives. It might still be the case that Lemieux is a weird fetishist who is getting off on making people affirm him as a woman when he's clearly not. It also might be the case that Lemieux is an accelerationist who is specifically acting as absurdly as possible to make the inherent contradictions of the progressive system as obvious as it can be, to make the cracks in it all the more apparent. I don't know which it is, but if it is the latter, then it's been working amazingly. The school board has been adamant in telling parents that Lemieux is a transitioning teacher who needs to express themselves as a woman for their own mental health. This is clearly a lie. The school board even had a legitimately trans member of staff testify, saying that there is a clear and obvious difference between reasonably sized breast prosthetics that some trans women, but mostly breast cancer survivors, are allowed to use, and the obvious fetish gear that Lemieux wears to the school. But even she was ultimately censored in the school board's report on the matter. I'm assuming out of fear of not being considered inclusive enough. At this point, though, the cat's out of the bag. This is clearly a fucking joke by Lemieux. I don't know if he's a creepy fetishist or an attack on progressivism, but if it is the latter, is it moral to involve kids in this? Yeah, they were high schoolers, more robust mentally than somebody in like grade 2, but nah, I still think this went too far, even if the goal was to leave progressives with egg on their face. I have no idea where this story is going to go next. Lemieux's probably going to get himself fired. The backlash might be severe enough that people on the school board are going to get fired too, but I wouldn't hold my breath for that to happen. This will probably just be swept under the rug. All I know is this is probably the end of those giant chimichangas at Oakville Trafalgar High. And hey, if there's an uptick on Rule34.com for searches of breast inflation porn from IPs in the Oakville area, we all now know why.